Hello, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. Our practice is just north of Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm going to be speaking today about Imago Dialogue. And the title of this video is Imago Dialogue Can Facilitate Communication Miracles. And that's a big promise there to say that miracles can happen in therapy. Miracles are few and far between, and they're slow in coming, to be quite honest with you. The recovery process, and by recovery process, I mean just working on your issues effectively, knowing the truth about what your issues are. It works, but it just works pretty slowly. When we're little, when we're 6 months old and a year old and 2 years old, we're sort of wet cement, and stuff is really etched into us very deeply. But when you get into your 30s, 40s, and 50s, you ain't wet cement anymore. You know, you're pretty crusty and set in your ways, and it takes a while. And I'm not a big tool guy. People always wanting to come to therapy and get some tools, and I tell them I'm not going to give you any tools. This isn't about tips, it's not about advice, and it's not about tools. It's about, I want to teach you to become healthier, and then you will act healthier when you are healthier. So I need to put a sort of a disclaimer here. I am also not a certified Imago therapist, but I do want to plug their work. I think Harville Hendrix is a genius. I think he's the fellow who founded Imago Therapy, and I just think he's a very wise man with a very powerful message that has really impacted the world in amazing ways. And I do want to plug the work of Imago Therapy. My only credentials as an Imago therapist is I have gone to their weekend, couples weekend, and read the book several times. And I see a local Imago therapist here in Indianapolis. I consider the best Imago therapist in Indianapolis. His name is Bernard Baca. So I have a lot of familiarity, and I do know how to facilitate Imago Dialogue, but just to let you know that I'm not actually certified in that. But I want to explain the concept, because you yourself don't have to be a certified therapist to employ this tool in your marriage. Frankly, I've known about Imago dialoguing for 20 years, and frankly, I have to confess, I thought it was a little corny, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't get it, because basically what it is mimicking back to your partner what they've shared, and it just seemed corny. It just seemed like something you'd see on a movie about weird therapy that sort of pokes fun at it. It just seemed silly, but as I will get into, it's not silly, it's not corny, it's a very powerful tool that, if you'll use and employ, can help your marriage a lot. So if you combined your own personal recovery, and by recovery I mean understanding what your issues are you a codependent? Are you a gambling addict? Are you a workaholic? Are you a counter-dependent? Do you have abandonment issues? Do you have a lot of shame? What went on in your family of origin? So by recovery, I mean having a lot of insight into who you are and where you came from and your family of origin, and having a really humble, broken, teachable attitude, being highly motivated to work on your issues, being very teachable. I've got some clients now that are just such a joy to work with. They're so teachable and enthusiastic and in touch with their emotions, and they just love coming to group therapy, and they're always coming up with epiphanies and insights, and they're just a joy to work with, and they're very humble and broken and teachable. You have to be in touch with your pain. A lot of people are who are counter-dependent or very well defended, large and in charge, driven, controlling folks. It's hard for them to dwell in their pain for very long. They can do it for a short period of time, but then they want to go back to being Superman or Superwoman. And they don't want to wallow and, cry and be sad. They want to take over the world. And so that's a challenge. And then the last two things is you do have to trust the process of therapy in recovery, and you do need to do a lot of homework and a lot of follow through. But when you add the recovery process to the Imago Dialogue in your conversations in your relationship, very powerful, very effective. So again, Harville Hendrix and his wife, I believe her name is Kelly LaHaye Hunt. They began Imago therapy with a book that he wrote called Getting the Love You Want. And I think it's the best book ever written on marriage counseling. And I've written a book on marriage counseling, and his is better. And it would sound a lot like something I would write about you marry your issues. Harville Hendrix was on Oprah 17 times, and as far as a guest therapist, that's a record. And he's trained thousands of therapists all around the world. So whatever community you're in, there's probably a community of Imago therapists. So you just get online and Google Imago therapist, and you'll find somebody who espouses these beliefs. His work sounds so much like mine. People ask me, did I learn this you marry your issues business from him? And I actually didn't. When I was in graduate school, my second year at Michigan State University in 1985, 86, my practicum instructor, her name was Olga something or other. She knew I had an interest in family of origin and family systems and Murray Bowen, and she gave me an article by a writer named Maggie Scarf, not a therapist, but a writer, and the book was called Intimate Partners, and there was about a 6 or 7 page excerpt at the Atlantic Monthly. This is 1985, and I read that, and very powerful. You can probably definitely find that book on Amazon.com, Maggie Scarf, Intimate Partners. You could probably just get the article if you Googled Atlantic Monthly 1985. So I don't know what month, but you can find it. But that became the seed for our approach of using genograms or family trees, and realizing that everybody always marries exactly the right person. Nobody ever in the history of marriage, in my belief, has ever married the wrong person. You marry the right person, and what makes them right isn't that they're fabulous at meeting your needs. What makes them right for you is ultimately, after the initial love, enmeshment runs out, they suck at meeting your needs, frankly, and they hurt you very much. And they're a hidden version of your parents' worst qualities. And that, my friends, is what love is. And if you didn't know that, I just said something very important. Rewind the tape and listen to it again. So let me explain Imago Dialogue and how it works. In my work with couples, the main problem is they both come in, they sit down, one of them will begin, and it isn't long until the other one tunes out. They roll their eyes, they sigh, that they get all fidgety in their chair, and you can just see the gears going in their brains because they're preparing their rebuttal. And many times they interrupt what the person is saying in order to, correct and set the record straight. And if there are certain topics that are sensitive, that the listener, is attuned to, I call it they've got a ring in a bull's nose. You put the ring in the bull's nose so you can control the bull. So if there are certain sensitivities, whether it's you need to be heard, or don't call me certain names, or there's a million rings in people's noses, that is just an extra sensitivity about a particular issue. One fellow I was meeting with today, he's got to have his wife admit and own her stuff, and he has sort of a compulsive need to make that happen. But if he goes about it compulsively, guess what? She's never going to admit to her side of things because she feels pressured, and that touches on her ring in her nose. So it makes for a lot of refereeing as a therapist. And if you have highly evolved people who aren't defensive and are good listeners and are respectful and don't interrupt and are aware of their buttons, aware of their rings in their nose, very little refereeing takes place. We draw a lot of our theory from a theorist. I just mentioned him, Murray Bowen, the father of family systems therapy. He's from 1950s through the 80s or so, and brilliant man. And he's the one to begin to use family trees or genograms as assessment tools. He's the one who sees families as systems, and the terms enmeshment, emotional cutoff, interdependency, individuation are his. And one day he was in a session, and a couple came in and they did advanced therapy, and that is they looked at each other and spoke to each other. They didn't funnel their communications through the therapist, and they communicated beautifully, and the therapist, Murray Bowen, didn't say a word. And as the fella was writing him a big fat check at the end of the sessions, he said, "Now, why am I writing this check? What'd you actually do in there?" And Murray Bowen said, "I provided a safe environment." And that's what he gets paid for. And a lot of what happens in therapy is we provide a safe environment because we're not going to let people beat people up emotionally. We're not going to let them be victim-y. We're not going to let them be overly critical. We're not going to let them be reactive. But using this tool of Imago therapy, it's a lot easier to achieve all those goals. So here's the thing. Couple comes in, and let's say the woman, it could be the man just as well, comes in and says, "I would like to go first, please, and I would like to be the sender." In other words, I've chosen an issue that I have concerns about that I would like to share. So the fella says, "Fine." I say, "Fine, let's begin." And so she starts to say whatever she's saying, and frankly, it can be completely wrong. It can be her projections, her denial, her delusions, her reactivity. It doesn't matter. The job of their spouse is to what they call mirror back. So let's say the wife comes in and says, "I think you're a jerk, and you've been an ass this week, and I don't like you, and you've hurt me, and let me list 10 qualities that you have that are awful. And so then a partner who's doing the Imago Dialogue correctly says, what I hear you saying is you believe that I'm a jerk and that I've acted like an ass this week, and that you're angry with me and I hurt you, and here's the 10 things that describe me. And without any defensiveness, any need to debate, offer a rebuttal, interrupt, just pleasant as pie. So then you finish mirroring what you heard, and then you say, did I get that right? And then she might say, well, you left out one thing and it's this. And so she says, or even the therapist will say, well, I did hear that you are a controlling creep too. Add it to your list. And it's usually not that reactive, but even if it is, you just mirror. The therapist I see, Dr. Baca, my girlfriend would come in and frankly, in my opinion, would begin by being reactive and doing a lot of projecting and stuff that I didn't consider to be true. And I'd say, I want to interrupt and correct it. He goes, it doesn't matter. Just mirror. Most of what people share couple to couple or, partner to partner is a projection. Don't take it personally. You don't have to correct anything. Just mirror. So I got to where I realized I don't have to get defensive. I can just understand her pain and not have to get into a reactive battle. After they complete, yes, what you got was correct, or here's added, you say, is there more? And then they go on and on and on. And about every, I would say, 4, 5, 6 sentences, they stop and then you mirror. If they go on for 10 minutes, it's too much to mirror, too much to remember. So, and then you say, did I get it right? Is there more? And then finally they get to the end and there's no more. But this is what happens into the process of the meeting. The sender, the person sharing, they really get in touch with the wounded little kid in them. And I've seen this many times where all of a sudden you're not dealing with a 42-year-old, you're dealing with a 4-year-old, and their eyes change. You can see into their soul. There's a sweetness and vulnerability about them. And then many times the therapist will see a pattern or correlation to family of origin stuff and say, did you ever feel that way in your childhood? And then they'll begin to talk about their childhood, and many times they'll begin to cry. And then the couple that comes in, in an adversarial manner, all of a sudden the listener isn't defensive. They're not reacting. They're not pouting. They're not interrupting. They're showing empathy. They're melting, and they're touching their partner's leg, and they're holding their hand, and they're giving them tissue. And you can look in their eyes, and there's nothing but sweetness and empathy. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I had a couple weeks ago, they snuggled. There was so much connection and positivity in the room that they snuggled. It was very sweet. So your partner really feels heard. The wounded little kid comes out. There is a connection to the underlying childhood wound. And then, there's a lot of empathy that comes out. So you learn too, just because they are projecting or pasting something onto you, that's okay. That's a projection that they have, and perhaps through understanding their family of origin wound, they learn how to not project as much. But it's okay to let somebody have a projection without becoming defensive about it. And it's okay if it isn't the truth, it's their truth. So when couples start doing this, then trust me, communication improves tremendously. Let me give you an example of my own relationship where I used a form of this Imago Dialogue, and it kept us from having a bad incident. And trust me, I don't always do it right. I grew up in a reactive family. I have a lot of shame. I have abandonment issues. I'm not saying, look at me, I'm the healthy guy who gets it all right. That's not the case. But in this case, I did pretty good. Girlfriend and I were out to dinner at Mitchell's Fish Market, which is an upscale seafood place, the place of our first date 5 years ago. So we were having an anniversary dinner of sorts and having a lovely time. We're sitting outside. It's a beautiful evening. And I mentioned that in a writing trip that was coming up for me in Louisville, in the same parking lot, there's a dinner theater. And I told her, hey, I might walk over there and take in a dinner theater one of those nights and enjoy that as a break from my writing. And that triggered her abandonment issues. And all of a sudden you don't ever take me on the trips, and you spend all your money on yourself. And it became something less than a lovely experience. And and the old me would have said, and we'd have been off to the races firing back defensive comments. And instead, I just let her talk and ask her if there were more things that she wanted to say. And I asked her, did you feel that way in your childhood? And in her childhood, she was the youngest of three with two older brothers, and she was always on the outs. They were on the end, they were cool, she was the outsider. In school, she was the outsider. And she was just feeling like an outsider left out of this dinner theater that I was going to go to. So after I got in touch with that wounded little girl, after about 5 or 10 minutes, she returned to her sane 42-year-old self, and we had a lovely evening, and we didn't have a fight, and she felt affirmed, and it was wonderful. But it would have been a big fight that ruined our dinner 3 years ago. So with this approach, I do think you'll need some coaching, either an Imago therapist. Also, I am available via Skype. I see Skype clients all over the country, even all over the world, and it works very well. It's just like showing up in the room. If you have good Wi-Fi, it works like a charm. It's very good. So read the book, Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix. It will help you. There are weekends where you go and you can have an intensive Imago weekend and do a lot of the activities in the book. Very helpful, very powerful. So thank you for watching. I want to encourage you to join our channel on YouTube, Family Tree Counseling. Again, there are ebooks of mine. I have 5 ebooks, one on abandonment, one on affair recovery, one on the basics of recovery, and several other books. And I'm currently working on one on shame that should be done in 2 or 3 months. So I wish you communication miracles. I encourage you to do Imago Dialogue and to read Getting the Love You Want. And I thank you for watching this video. God bless.